I'm Dave Logren. That's Adam Shar. We got a 5-game Monday slate coming at you. Adam, I had the deep dive posted by 247. At 247 and 10 seconds, Kyrie Irving was ruled out. So, a lot of the research that had already been done, not just for me, but for a lot of people going into this slate, I don't want to say it's flipped on its head, but it definitely changes a whole lot when a player like Kyrie Irving, who I had quite a bit of interest in to begin with, who has 30% usage rate, is easily the top player on the team by a wide margin, is now ruled out, and they're facing the Brooklyn Nets.
And now you know why I post the deep dive at 4:55 every day.
Stop it, dude. The other day I ripped on you is because it was it was 4:55. No, it wasn't. It was 5:55 because we had a 6 o'clock show.
Okay, then it was an 8 o'clock slate. That's the same as 4:40 or 4:55.
Oh, master of shelf life. Although the clicks did explode right when it hit the site. But yeah,
you got to keep people waiting, Luffy.
I hear you. Well, the thing is, though, I could post it late, but then when am I supposed to eat?
You don't eat anyway.
I was trying to get something to eat, and then that Kyrie news happened. But yeah, I don't know. You go you have no problem going straight into the show. I like to take like an hour and a half break and then do the deeper dive. But
yeah, that's fair. I don't do nearly as much talking as you on the shows, so I'm fine without the break.
Fair enough. Got to take the dog for a walk too, I feel bad when she's in here by herself all day. Lonely. All right, let's get to it. Just before we jump into the actual games, anything stand out to you just from a roster construction standpoint, being that a guy like Trey Burke, 86% projected ownership today. As far as the high-priced top shelf guys go, we did have Kyrie, but now you're just talking about like Nikola Jokic against Memphis, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, with Cousins on the team. We'll dive deep into that later on in the show. Actually, it's the second game we'll talk about. And then I guess you can throw like Kemba Walker and D. Russ into the mix, but not a whole lot tonight.
Yeah, I mean, basically a ton of value on this slate, and it's all at point guard or the guard positions for the most part. So you'll be contrarian if you pay up, but there are so many guys there that I'm not sure it's really even an optimal strategy that often from that standpoint. So, kind of an interesting slate in that regard where there's a lot of value and it's all at the same position.
Yeah, good point. There's not a lot elsewhere, but a whole lot at the point. Let's jump into it with the Charlotte Hornets, New York Knicks. By the way, when today's slate, when these lines came out, there wasn't a line that was smaller than 6 points. Every team was either a 6-point favorite or more, or a 6-point dog or more. So once again, not really taking the blowouts into consideration all that much here, but we don't anyway. Just kind of to get to the point that none of these games on paper are like razor thin spreads. 6 points, 5.5 is not much though. So let's do it, Adam. Charlotte, 12-point favorites. This is the biggest spread on the slate. 222 total against the Knicks. We'll start with the Hornets. We'll get this out of the way first, and then we'll break down the mess in New York. Kemba Walker's got a minor neck injury, little neck strain, but he's going to play. 8,900 on DraftKings. The price is coming up on FanDuel. He's 9,200, only 400 less than Steph Curry. And on DraftKings, he's only 200 less than Curry. Let's talk about the backcourt with guys like Walker and Lamb first.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned them this being the biggest spread on the slate, but Charlotte's a nice team in that most of their production comes from a couple of guys, Kemba being one of them, Jeremy Lamb being another one. And so if they do, if they blow out the Knicks, it's probably coming from one of those two guys. If the game stays competitive and it's high scoring, it's probably still, really good games for those two guys. The issue with Kemba, of course, is that, all the value is at the point guard position. So on FanDuel, I think it's probably a little bit tougher to get to him because you don't have essentially, 4 spots that you can roster these guys at. On DraftKings, in my initial crunch before the show, I got him in about a quarter of my lineup still, even with all the value at the position. I think that there are legitimate concerns about Kemba right now because his performance for the most part has not been great since Cody Zeller's injury. We've seen the assist percentage go down, which makes sense when he loses his roll man and you operate out of the pick and roll as much as Kemba does. Also, Zeller is just good at setting screens, and so taking him out of there could hurt Kemba a bit in that regard as well. But I also think some of it's just a small sample size. It's still been less than a month without Cody Zeller on the floor, and I think that he probably does better than he has been lately, even if he does take a little bit of a hit. So I have no issue with Kemba. I don't think he's necessarily like an optimal play in cash games with all the value at point guard, but in tournaments, I still, like I said, I'm getting a pretty good amount of him in lineups. Jeremy Lamb, position wise, is more appealing with shooting guard eligibility, a reasonable price tag, should play around 30 minutes against a terrible Knicks defense that also should give him the opportunity for extra rebounds and peripherals, which we know is how he normally has to run into his big games. So really like both of these guys. On my initial crunch, getting about 25% of each.
I'll never forget the first time Jeremy Lamb was chalk. Beginning of last year at some point. He was 3K flat. Might have been 2 years ago. I remember I played 150 lineups of Jeremy Lamb out of 150 lineups, which is probably not one of the wiser decisions I've made. And that was the game, I know you remember this, where I'm willing to say, I'm willing to admit I got lucky, and anybody did, where he had like 15 rebounds starting at shooting guard. You remember that?
I took the opposite approach of you, and I faded Jeremy Lamb and was incredibly pissed off.
Well, you made up for it on Friday. Don't worry. You're all right. I don't feel bad. You know what's interesting about Kemba, though? You talk about since Zeller went out, and the beautiful kind of thing about this is Zeller went out after the 31st of December. So basically, anything in 2019 is without Zeller. Anything before 2019 is with Zeller. Kemba Walker, since the start of January, since Zeller went out, and I'm not saying this is not something I'm using to say that Kemba should be better or worse, but since the start of January, he still has a 31% usage rate, right? He's still getting up the shots. He has a 30.9% usage rate on the season. Since January 1st, it is exactly 30.9%. But his assist rate is 23% since the start of January. You've really seen the number of assists fall recently. Obviously, he's not a spectacular rebounder. His rebounding rate's in line with his season and career averages, but the assist totals have come down, and it definitely has hurt him on those games where he doesn't shoot well, and we've seen that in quite a bit of spots. I still think he's a perfectly fine play here. With Kyrie Irving being out, it makes it a little bit easier to get to it. Like if Kyrie Irving was playing today, what did you say? Your first crunch had 25% Kemba?
Yeah.
Do you think you would have had 25% Kemba if Irving was healthy?
No.
Right. Probably not close to that. So it makes a big difference. I think 25% sounds about right. I like Jeremy Lamb too. If you're going to give me 30 plus minutes or around that against the Knicks, I'm not going to turn that down. The rest of this team, though, guys like Guillermo or Willie Hernangomez, Marvin Williams, I've seen some chatter about him, but tough time paying that $5,300 price tag off. What do you make of the front court or anyone else for the Charlotte Hornets?
Yeah, I was more interested in Marvin Williams this morning before all the extra value came out, because I do think it's another spot where he could approach 34 minutes. It's another, Charlotte front, or not Charlotte. It's a Knicks front court where there's no real need for Bismack Biyombo to play extra minutes. Hernangomez is a defensive liability, so who knows how many minutes he gets. And you could see very similar to how we saw against Milwaukee, where, Williams played 34 or 35 minutes. But with all the other value opening up, whether it's Kevon Looney at the same position or just all the guard value, you just don't really need to get to Marvin Williams all that frequently. He ended up in about 5% of my lineups on that first crunch, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Didn't get any Hernangomez, I don't think. He's someone that, if you're playing 150 tournament lineups, he certainly has the upside, but his minutes can go anywhere from like 8 to 20 minutes. So who knows? Batum's been playing bigger minutes lately, but again, I just don't really need a $4,900 Nick Batum. So he ended up in a very similar percentage of lineups as Williams.
Yeah. Batum's floor is remarkably low. Emax sent me an article on him the other night. Might have been last night.
Yeah.
How Hornets Nick Batum got, quote, lost a little while finding his way back quiet to critics. I haven't read it yet,
Yeah,
But
I skimmed through it, but made sure that I called Nick Batum, Emacs boy, on our show this morning. So
that, that's not who I want being my boy at this stage of his career.
hit him either, but you got to take it.
Yeah, what can you do? Did it say anything about any adjustments he's made?
It was talking more just about him not caring about scoring, and then him taking a
Well, we
step
know
back.
that.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
That's
and then,
pretty
him being selfless and taking a step back in terms of ball handling with Tony Parker coming in and with a more offensive-minded Jeremy Lamb replacing Kid Gilchrist in the starting lineup, and how Charlotte fans hate him, and whenever he has a good game, they would like him traded, and whenever he has a bad game, they just bitch about his salary.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had such disdain for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's him. It's that he doesn't do what they want their $24 million a year guy to do.
Fair enough. On the other side, we will get to Trey Burke, I promise you. With his right now, if you're looking at our ownership projections for DraftKings on awesemo.com, Trey Burke before the update, and I'm sure we will have an update soon. 86% projected ownership on DraftKings, 62% on FanDuel. You know what? Screw it, Adam. Let's just talk about it now. Frank Ntilikina is out with an ailing groin. Emmanuel Moutier's also out. It's pretty much at this point. It's pretty much the minutes go here, or Alonzo Trier gets them. But then in the same breath, we saw Mario Hezonja play 30 minutes last game after not playing at all. Could Kevin Knox and Lance Thomas play more minutes, and Trier gets more run at the point? I think we still have to project Burke for around 30 minutes and roll with it.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me from that last game was because Ntilikina was injured basically right before halftime, which is nice because it gave us a full half of seeing what Fizdale did. Not that there's any continuity ever in what Fizdale does, but we at least could see that rotation for half of a game. And Trier played all of his minutes as the backup to Burke. So as from a projection standpoint, just taking the information that we have based on that game, because I don't have any better way of deciphering what's going to happen tonight. I gave Trier the backup minutes. I gave Burke 30. I gave Trier 18. I think I threw Trier maybe like 2 or 4 at another position. And then I gave Hezonja 22 minutes, gave Knox, like 30. So I have Burke at 30 minutes. At his price tag, I still think that that's obviously a very good play. If he's actually 86% owned, I doubt that I'm that high, but I do also think he'll probably end up being my highest owned player. It's just that he's so productive on a permanent basis when he gets the opportunity. He's played 254 minutes without Moutier or Cantor on the floor this season. He has a 28.5% usage rate, 24% assist percentage. He's averaged a little under a fantasy point per minute. At his price tag, it's just a good spot. Obviously, he just comes with David Fizdale risk.
That's really what it comes down to. That type of risk is something you're probably just going to have to take. Some players are better when they're given an expanded role where they're not worried about getting yanked after they missed their first 2 shots. If you look at someone like Trey Burke last year, I'm sure you remember, we saw when he was thrust into the starting lineup when they were basically just intentionally losing games. He had some monster performances. It was with Washington, right?
It was earlier this year with the Knicks.
No. I'm talking about last year. Last year with Washington, towards the end of the season, he had monster, huge games.
I probably just blacked out the Wizards season last year.
Very possible. Or he was with the Knicks, and I could be just totally wrong. Was he with? I guess he was with the Knicks last year. Maybe Washington the year before. I know he was with Washington though.
Yeah, he was with Washington. I think it was a couple years ago.
It was 2 years ago when he just started. It was either with Washington or the Knicks, but I know he was getting additional starts. A bunch of players were banged up, and you weren't worried about his playing time. How worried should we be about his playing time today? I don't know. I think you have the right idea by giving him 30. Could Trey Burke get above 30 minutes? It's very possible. I mean, they seriously lack depth. There's no question. But given the risk when it comes to Fizdale, it's hard to say. But yeah, last year, towards the end of the year, he had that 42-point game, not fantasy points, but 42 real points. And then was averaging like 30 plus minutes per game over the last month of the season. So I, I guess you got to put him at 30 here. But I also think somebody like Hardaway is interesting, right? I mean, if you're talking about also volatile players, but players that are volatile and don't necessarily have a whole lot of risk given when it comes to their playing time, Hardaway is projected to have significantly lower ownership. You don't have to worry about taking up a point guard spot. He's 5% projected ownership on DraftKings at 5,800. So I just look at somebody like Hardaway. He's still a 27% usage player. He's still playing, 39 minutes last competitive game. Well, 31 minutes last game, 39, 35 the few games before that. If you are someone that's willing to take some risks and roll the dice at getting away from someone that might literally be almost 90% owned, I still expect Hardaway to play a lot of minutes today. And this Charlotte defense has played very poorly over the last 1+ months, particularly since Cody Zeller went down. What do you make of the rest of this Knicks team? We can talk Noah Vonleh starting at center as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Hardaway. If his ownership does come in around 5%, like we have it now, I think he'll end up being one of my bigger stands on this slate, because in that initial crunch I did, I got him in about 24% of my lineups. Right. I have him projected for 35 or 36 minutes, about a 25.5% usage rate without Moutier or Cantor on the floor. And like you said, it's not a particularly good Charlotte defense. If the Knicks hang in this game, he's likely to be a pretty big reason why. So I think the price tag's appealing enough. And if he comes in at that low ownership, then I am pretty confident I'll be overweight there. Vonleh as well. I think it's a great spot for him. He really disappointed yesterday, obviously against Miami, but this matchup is much more similar to that Brooklyn matchup that he dominated 2 games ago than it is to the matchup he had yesterday against Miami. Since Zeller went down, this has just been an absolutely amazing matchup for opposing centers. You should get around 30 minutes of Vonleh exclusively playing center tonight against whatever combination of Biyombo, Hernangomez, and Marvin Williams James Borrego wants to throw out there. Vonleh is very productive without Cantor on the floor, without Moutier or Cantor this season. He's played 423 minutes. He's averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, and then you get a really nice spot here. So he's, I think, a really good play as well.
I'm with you on Vonleh. Since Zeller went down again in the whole month of January, only one team has allowed a higher efficiency to centers than Charlotte. They've been beat up by opposing bigs, and it makes sense. I mean, you're talking about guys like Hernangomez and Biyombo manning the center position. That's not exactly frightening. And then maybe Frank Kaminsky every couple of weeks gets some run. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. So. With Moutier and Ntilikina out, with Cantor not playing, I think there are a number of spots you can go here, and Hardaway being one that 5,800 at 5% of projected ownership, it's really just too low. I mean, it's really all it comes down to. You don't have to love him, but you have to understand that there's leverage there at 5%, especially when his teammate's going to be astronomically owned. How willing are you to pair guys like Hardaway how willing are you to pair Hardaway with someone with Trey Burke?
I have no problem with it because they're both underpriced. If Burke were like $6K and Hardaway were $6,500, I'd be less likely to do it. But the fact that they're both inexpensive and the fact that they are double-digit underdogs going into Charlotte here, it's not like I'm not worried about, Hardaway has a big game, Burke has a big game, and they only play 3 quarters because they blow out Charlotte. I don't think that happens. So I think that pairing them is perfectly fine. I don't want, all 3 of Hardaway, Vonleh, and Burke, but I think having 2 of them is fine.
Yeah, I'm with you too. Mario Hezonja played 30 minutes last game after not seeing a single second of court time the 2 games before that. But obviously, you have to look a little bit deeper into this. Kevin Knox yesterday played 22 minutes. And then Lance Thomas played 20 or 18 minutes. I think putting Hezonja at 22 minutes is fair, but for all I know, the guy doesn't play at all or plays 10 minutes, because we know that Trier is going to have to play most of his minutes at the point, maybe all of them. So yeah, you're probably right to put him around 22 minutes, but that's if Knox gets back up to 30. If Knox sees his minutes come down, then there's more, but it's really, really difficult to start playing guessing games there.
Yeah, I mean, I have his own at 22. I gave Knox his 30. It obviously could go any direction.
And we have one more question before we move to the next game. He said, isn't Trier the pivot off of 90% owned Burke and just trust that Fizdale is crazy? I see what you're saying, right? Because he's going to be backing him up. It definitely makes sense. The only thing I don't like about that, Adam, is that Trier's $5,300 on DraftKings. Burke is 42.
Right.
Trier's 40 or 5,300 on FanDuel, and Burke is 45. Look, I even said to you earlier today that I was very much on the fence about whether or not I wanted to get it to load up on Burks just because of how ridiculously popular he's going to be. I'd honestly rather just go with Hardaway, but we're not saying that Hardaway has to be the pivot off of Burks, just someone that's nobody's really looking at in the same game who's going to benefit from many of the same thing Burks is fitting from. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, your point about Trier's price is the big issue. Like, if he were, let's say Trier were like 3,500, it would become a really appealing spot to just be like, okay, I'm going to under project Burke, I'm going to over project Trier and hope that the game breaks out that way. But let's say Trier started this game, would he even be a really popular play? Like, would we be rostering him over Terry Rozier at the same price point?
At
like,
53?
I would.
At
Right.
50, no. At 4,000, I think very much so. Yeah. But
right. It adds an extra element of risk if you make that move. Like, he obviously is the clear leverage play. Like, if Burke just flat out busts, doesn't get playing time, Trier's getting that run. Yep. The issue is just that if you give Trier 30 minutes, he still has to play pretty well to give you a score at 5,300 that you actually want.
Do we have a confirmed starting lineup?
Not that I've seen.
So how do we know Trier doesn't start?
I mean, we don't. Burke started the second half yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Dave Fizdale. I mean, no, look, of course, and our whole approach is you kind of have to go with what you've seen before to do some decent job of predicting the future. I'm obviously with you on this. I'm just saying it's not crazy to think that Burke could, or that Trier could start.
Yeah. No.
And then last one, SJM says no love for Mitchell Robinson. I'll let you answer this too, but not for Mitchell Robinson. He was playing kind of well, got 23 minutes, which is why Vonleh only saw limited minutes, 25 minutes, but I expect Vonleh to get over 30 minutes again today, which means that if I like Vonleh getting 30 minutes, I can't be liking Robinson because that means I expect him to get less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, I never really project Robinson for more than 20. I have Vonleh at 30. I have Robinson at 18.
At 18.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And Robinson only played 16 against the Nets last game anyway. Or wait, never mind. They played yesterday.
No, Mitchell Robinson played 22 minutes last game. Yeah.
Yeah. I opened the wrong tab.
By the way, we took a bunch of time on that game, but we needed to break down New York. There are a couple games here where we won't spend nearly as much time, so don't worry. We'll have this wrapped up by 6 p.m. and we'll get all the information you need. Indiana, Golden State. We got the Pacers, 7-point home dogs, 228 total. No Draymond Green. I want to start here with the Golden State Warriors and ask you about someone like Kevin Durant, who, with Green off the court since the start of last season, he sees his usage go from like 28 to 33. His assist rate goes up like 3%. His per minute production from 1.34 to 1.43. Interestingly, though, this season, Durant has played most of his minutes with Cousins on the floor, right? 51 minutes, 51 of Cousins' 81 minutes have come with Durant on the floor. 21.5% usage, 5% rebounding, 18% assist rate, 1.04 fantasy points per minute. Of course, that's not enough really to glean what we expect from KD, but Green is not a very high usage player to begin with at all. And, many of those voided shots or rebounds and assists are going to go to Cousins. Does this Green being out really help Durant enough to where we put him in play as kind of a premier option tonight?
I don't think it's a big difference because, like you said, you have Cousins on the floor now. But also, if you just run numbers with Draymond off, you're probably getting a decent number of minutes where Curry was off as well, and that's why you see the usage increase for Durant. He's played 300. Yeah.
That's why I ran it back to. That's why I ran it back to last year too, because Durant's played like 10 or whatever games without Curry, and Green off the court too. So I wanted to even it out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, like this year, he's played 398 minutes with Curry on and with Green off, and most of his minutes now, because of their rotation, are with Curry on. He has a 26.7% usage rate, 22.7 assist percentage. Basically the same rates as he has with Green. So I don't see it as a big boost for him. If anything, maybe a boost for Cousins. The biggest boost would, I think, be the minutes for Kevon Looney.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about Kevon Looney now, because not only should we expect Looney to get minutes at the 4 and some backup minutes at the 5, but Jonas Jerebko's out for this game as well. And Jordan Bell hasn't exactly been, proving Steve Kerr that he's a great player, or proving to Kerr that he deserves a lot of run. So you've got guys like Alfonso McKinney and Jordan Bell behind Looney, who has clearly been, one of the preferred reserves on this team with the injuries they've suffered to the front court all season.
Yeah, I have Looney at about 28 minutes here. When the front court was banged up before and he was starting at center, when in games where he did not get in foul trouble, you were normally seeing him get around 28 minutes. So I gave that to him here. I gave Jordan Bell 16 minutes as an additional backup center, with Boogie getting about 26. So barring foul trouble, I think you get around there from Looney. I think that he's a good value option, especially because there is a lack of value at the forward and center positions as opposed to the guard position. So, I like Looney quite a bit at a cheap price tag.
So do I. I mean, obviously there are some concerns that, most of his minutes won't be at the 5 where they were at the 5 before with Cousins out, and he will still be playing with guys like Cousins and Durant and Clay and Curry. I mean, it's going to be tough for him to produce at a high per minute clip, but if he's out there, I have him projected for 28 minutes right now, which I think, given that Cousins plays 26 or so minutes, is very doable. I like Cousins though, man. I the problem is looking at the ownership. It's like, man, is he really going to be that high owned again? I know he's pushing out more than 1.5 fantasy points per minute, which is incredible. But I want to see that he's going to get 27 minutes or close to it tonight and not still be limited to 24 before I take the bait. What are your thoughts on Cousins, specifically on DraftKings, where he's not only 6,500, but also has power forward eligibility?
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to end up being around 40% owned, I'll be significantly under that. Right now, I got him at about 16%, and that's with him projected for 26 minutes. I don't think he's not a 1.5 fantasy point per minute player. He just isn't. He was a little under a 1.4 fantasy point per minute player with New Orleans playing alongside Davis.
Starting.
Okay, yeah, that's not too surprising, I don't think. So you're keeping Looney in his same role basically, but probably still, I would think, getting more minutes.
Talk about Cousins. What you're saying, you don't see him as a 1.5 per minute guy,
right? Yeah. So he was fully healthy last year, and he played almost 800 minutes with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, and he was at 1.36 fantasy points per minute. I don't see how, over a bigger sample size, he improves on that, coming off of an Achilles injury, playing with all these, all-stars on Golden State. It just doesn't make any sense. So I still think he's at best like a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy going forward. And if he's going to play 26 minutes, then, if he has that average production, you're looking at, around 35 fantasy points. So you need him, for one, to really outperform his average on a per minute basis. But if he's going to be 40% owned, you're not even really getting an edge if that happens. You're still competing with 40% of the field. So I just don't really see the reason to be overweight on him or anything. If he were low owned, it would be one thing. But at $6,500, even if he gets me 36 points, I just don't really care in tournaments.
So why do you not see him being a 1.5 per minute guy? Because of the players that he's going to be around, that he plays around?
Yeah, because we have almost 800 minutes of him last year playing with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, being a 1.36 guy. I don't see why he would be more productive with Golden State coming off of an Achilles injury than he was last year at full strength, playing with less mouths to feed.
Fair enough, but I think you could also make the argument that playing next to somebody like Anthony Davis is a little bit different than playing next to low usage guys and just smaller, less imposing, dominant on the boards guys like Green or Kevon Looney. I do think there's a difference to be made there, or a distinction to be drawn there with a guy like Anthony Davis.
Well, sure, but I think that's made up for by the fact that you have Kevin Durant and Steph Curry handling the ball and taking massive amounts of shots, not to mention Clay. and you have Dre picking up assists and some rebounds. So I mean, like, yeah,
Of
Dre
course.
isn't Anthony Davis, but those other guys I think are a bigger issue.
No, well, see, that's okay. So we see it a little bit different. I see him being, an equal issue here because Cousins still does so many things right that, dropping his usage down a couple percent. Like last year, his usage was what, 32%. I expect in the city, so it'll be a few. I expect him to be around 27 and a half, maybe 28%. He's at 27 and a half right now. In a game like this where Bell's going to start next to him, I still have interest in Cousins on DraftKings. If we get some word that he can play 27 minutes, the few extra minutes to me are important here. It might not seem like it's important, but 23 24 compared to maybe 27 minutes is still significant to me because
Yeah.
even if it's like 1.4 fantasy points per minute, you're still looking at 37, 38 fantasy points if it's not 1.5. So I think there's still upside at 6,500 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I'm not nearly as interested.
Yeah, if he's anywhere close to 40%, I'll be underweight. Like the only reason I have any is because it's a 5-game slate.
Yeah, that's kind of the disappointing thing that everyone just keeps piling on to Cousins every single night.
Like if you give Cousins 26 minutes at 1.6 points per minute, you get 42 points. That's good. I don't think that you have to have it to win a tournament.
Yeah. Oh, I don't. No, absolutely not. So if we were to ask ourselves who around him make for better plays that can outproduce him, we talked about Vonleh. We can talk about Al Horford. We'll talk about all of them throughout the show. I do like Cousins. But another thing too is it's not the greatest matchup either. The Pacers have done a decent job of containing bigs. I'd be under the field too, but I don't think I dislike him as much as you do either.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, so in the crunch I did before the show, the list of power forwards on DraftKings that I have more of than Cousins is Horford, Harris, Tatum, Durant, Harrell, Looney, Morris, Vonleh.
Okay. Yeah, I like all of them. If we're talking small forward eligible too, are these guys that are actually being played at power forward or that have eligibility?
That have eligibility.
Okay.
I removed DeMarcus Cousins' as center eligibility on DraftKings.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense then. We had a question: Steph Curry or Kemba Walker on FanDuel.
Let me see. I didn't crunch FanDuel.
The $400 difference.
I mean, I think they're really comparable. I know on DraftKings I have like identical exposure to both right now. I'm pulling up my FanDuel stuff. Like they're definitely. I would take the lower owned one. Like there is not a big difference between them.
No, and while you may expect Cousins' production to come down, there's no denying that him just being on the court affects everybody else.
One thing to point out with Curry too, and I'm really interested to see what happens tonight, but he had been playing like almost 100% of his minutes alongside Durant, and obviously that's not great for either of them. Against Boston last game in the first half, Curry subbed out earlier in the first quarter, subbed back in to start the second quarter, so he got some time without Durant. And that's the quarter where he dropped like 17 actual points. In the second half, though, they went back to their normal thing where Curry played all of his minutes alongside Durant. So it's something to at least keep an eye on in this game.
Yeah, and we had been seeing Klay Thompson and Green out there with Cousins when Curry and Durant take a rest.
Right.
Yeah, Klay Thompson has played all but 73 of 84 potential minutes with Cousins. Green 71 of 84. So, Thompson's going to be out on the floor if it goes as expected as it's been going for almost all of Cousins' minutes, all but around 2 or 3 per game.
So just to prove that I wasn't a cop-out when I said to take the lower-owned guy, my FanDuel projections, I have Kemba Walker at 45.47, and I have Steph at 45.4.
Did it take him that long to load?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a feeling. All right. Anyone else from Golden State? Do you have interest in Klay at 6,100?
Not in any big amounts.
What about the Pacers? Tyreek Evans, by the way, who really didn't have much interest in anyway. He's when he's not playing in the same capacity as he did with the Pelicans or whoever, even Memphis, when he was a ball handler who would actually drive to the rim, who would get shots at the basket, and not somebody that was playing way more off the ball. The Kings almost ruined his career in one of his first few seasons because they tried to make him a small forward after winning Rookie of the Year as a point guard. He's just not a good wing player. He's not a good three-point shooter. He's not a good shooter, but he's a good scorer. Well, now he's out, so we don't have to worry about that, Adam. Let's talk about the Pacers before we move on.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see what their starting lineup is because Corey Joseph has not started a game this year. Aaron Holiday has not started a game this year. I could see potentially it being like McDermott inserted into the starting lineup because I don't know that they want Corey Joseph chasing Klay Thompson and his 6'7" body around. I don't know how effective that would be.
You're not going to start Sabonis and Turner and move
Right.
Thad to the 3, even though he is a 3, and
Yeah,
Bogdanovich to
he
the
would
2.
get murdered.
Against Golden State, you'd get destroyed. Yeah,
Right.
You
And
can't
they could start Sumner. McMillan actually had or whoever their coach is now, actually had a quote.
Yeah.
It is McMillan. Okay. He had a quote actually about potentially playing Sumner more in upcoming games because he likes his length and he likes what he can do on the defensive end. So I don't think it would be surprising if he starts. If that's the case, I still wouldn't give him a ton of minutes, but I have no idea really what they're going to do with the starting lineup. We just haven't seen it. I do know that definitely depending on ownership, but Darren Collison becomes a really interesting tournament play here. I think that you could see him get up to around 36 minutes. He's played about 106 minutes this year without either one of Evans or Oladipo on the floor. He has a 20.5% usage rate with a 37.5% assist percentage. That's obviously a relatively small sample size, but it makes sense that he would just have the ball in his hands a lot more. And we've seen him be pretty productive when he has opportunities with guys injured this year. So if he's going to be low owned, he's another guy similar to Hardaway where I think I'll be probably pretty far over the field on him. Beyond that, you do get some value in Holiday, who I have expected to play about 22 minutes. I think Corey Joseph probably plays around 30 minutes. Neither of those guys are huge priorities for me, but they're both okay. Collison's the guy that I really like as a result of Evans being out.
Me too. He's the only one that really makes a big swing, makes a decent difference for me. By the way, metaphorical gun to my head, I would say Doug McDermott starts.
That's my guess also.
If I had to guess, he's the best fit for this matchup as well because he can actually just stand there and, chuck him up when he gets the opportunity. McBuckets should get the start, but we have no idea. What we do know is that Trey Burke will start for the New York Knicks. So that is confirmed. Trey Burke starting for the New York Knicks in place of the injured Frank Ntilikina. Let's talk about Boston and Brooklyn. Kyrie Irving, I had a lot of love for him today. He's been outstanding. I preferred him over Curry, over Durant at a similar cost, over Kemba. And now he's out. So you got Rozier on DraftKings. Last time Irving was out, Rozier was like 3,700 or 4K flat. There was a significant difference. I don't remember, or I think it was $4,000 to $1,000. Well, now he's 5,300. But on FanDuel, Terry Rozier is considerably cheaper. He's $4,500. Let's talk about Rozier and, the subsequent beneficiaries of no Irving, like Marcus Morris. And I already really liked Al Horford in this spot, Adam. And now I just like him more. So go ahead.
Yeah, as did I. Horford, has been playing really well lately. For the season, he's been over a point per minute guy, but of late, he's been closer to 1.1 points per minute. Now you get more assist opportunities for him without Kyrie out there. He's a good facilitator, and you'll see him, probably pick up a couple of extra assists. It's a great matchup against the Brooklyn front court. There's no reason for me not to like Horford. I'm projecting him for 32 minutes. I know he played 38 last game against Golden State. I'm not going that high in my projection, but he'd been in that 30 to 32 minute range pretty frequently lately. So I'm going there with him. I like him quite a bit. Obviously really like Rozier. He had the one disappointing game against Brooklyn when Kyrie sat a couple of games ago, but there's no reason to expect him not to play 30 to 32 minutes as long as this game is competitive. He is a good fantasy point producer, especially at a low 5K price tag. He's perfectly fine. So I like him. And then some interesting guys like Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, I think is a good play. Morris is a fine play at his price tag. As far as prioritizing them goes, I would say Rozier and Horford are the top two for me. Then Jason Tatum, then Morris and Smart, then Brown and Hayward.
Sweet. I don't really need to say anything else because it's exactly what we've been saying every time Irving's out.
Yeah.
You kind of just we know the drill. You just recycle this, and now you've got a really good spot against Brooklyn.
Yeah. I do want to just point out, because we talked about it a little bit in chat, and because I know some people had talked about it before, and then it kind of worked out for them. Wanamaker had the good game 2 times ago when Irving and Smart were both out. And then last game, he ended up playing 20 – he played 20 minutes against Cleveland. I don't even see that many minutes for him. If you look at the first half rotation, he was solely the backup point guard to Terry Rozier. Rozier played almost 16 first half minutes. Wanamaker played the other 8. In the second half, you had Rozier getting foul trouble. Wanamaker didn't even sub in for him. Wanamaker subbed in and played the entire fourth quarter in a 20-point game. So I don't see any reason to think Wanamaker gets more minutes than whatever 48 minus Rozier's minutes is, unless, well, even if the game does blow out. But you should be projecting Rozier for 30 to 32. So I don't really see how Wanamaker gets a bunch of minutes here. Yeah.
I don't see it either. And quite frankly, I don't even know if it's worth it. Well, if it blows out and we're not, it's an effort or an exercise in futility trying to get that or to answer that question. So yeah, he'd get some extra run, but we really don't know.
Yeah. And the last time they were in this situation, it blew out and he played 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
He had a good line because he shot like 100% or something, but
20 minutes in a blowout would really be like the most I don't see him getting above that.
I mean, like he would need like an injury.
Like
right. He would need like an injury to Rozier or Smart or something to get more.
Right. Exactly. All right. Yeah, but with Horford, it's just really difficult not to like him here. Plus, there's no more concerns about minutes. I mean, that's been gone for a little while now. You've got an excellent matchup, a Brooklyn team that's just been smashed in pretty much every category against opposing centers. So, yeah, not a big deal. Now, the thing is that we got a 9-point spread here. It's Rabashua says Brooklyn's been playing well. We're not saying it's going to be a blowout. No one's saying it's going to be a blowout. We're saying even if it was, Wanamaker still doesn't get I won't put words in your mouth. That's what I'm saying. And I'm assuming that's what you were saying as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that you shouldn't be projecting him even for as many minutes as he got last game, like last time in this situation, because that game did blow out and he still only got 40 minutes.
Right. And, we've got a decent amount of injuries with this Nets team. You have got, so if you look at the amount of injuries that we have here, obviously guys like Karis LeVert and Allen Crabbe are still out, but you're also down Treveon Graham. He is confirmed out. Joe Harris is still questionable, but you have no Jared Dudley either. So those minutes have to go somewhere. And while they may not be household names, there are still guys that were getting significant playing time. Graham was playing significant minutes almost every night. So what do you make of this rotation if Joe Harris is also out? I would expect Amari Carroll to see a significant amount of minutes here. And then, the rest be filled in by RHJ at the 4 and Rodions Kurucs and those type of players.
Yeah. So what is it? We have Graham out and then we have Harris questionable.
Right. And of course, Jared Dudley is still out as well.
Right. So I would expect that you get Theo Pinson. If with Graham out, I think you get more Pinson. That's what we saw happen last game where Pinson got a bunch of run, pulling that game up now. But Graham didn't play like the entire fourth quarter. Pinson played a ton. So I would expect more minutes for him. I would expect that if Harris is out, it just opens up more minutes for like Kurucs also. So last game, Treveon Graham played the first 5, almost 6 minutes of the third quarter, and then didn't play anymore. Pinson played the entire rest of the game. He got to 26 minutes. So I think that he takes a good amount of Graham's minutes. You probably see an uptick for Kurucs. If Harris is also out, then more minutes for Carroll. Napier would have to play more. Russell's minutes become safer. And Mitchell Creek probably picks up some minutes.
Mitchell Creek. Here's a good one. Horford or Harrell?
I have in that initial crunch, I have more Horford. That doesn't factor in what I end up changing because of ownership projections. I like both a lot, but I have more Horford right now.
For what it's worth, I have Horford projected with one more fantasy point than Harrell. So very, very similar, except Horford you're getting at a cheaper cost. Not significant. Well, it is a little bit significant. Horford's what? 64. That's a discount. That's a significant discount. Quick take on D'Angelo Russell. He let a lot of people down the other day. Got his quick third foul to start the second quarter. Started off awfully in the first quarter too, and then just finished with a terrible game after looking really good recently. But foul trouble can do that to you. It was against the Knicks too. I mean, it was a great spot to erupt, and now clearly left a bad taste in people's mouths. He's projected at 7% ownership against a tough Boston defense. What do you make of D'Angelo Russell here?
I wish I could get to him. I just can't really find any argument outside of the fact that he's low owned and he has a high ceiling. But you're paying for that ceiling now. He's 86 on DraftKings and 84 on FanDuel. He's playing a position that is full of value. So, the opportunity cost is pretty high as well. It's a tough matchup. He's not priced down for it. I like rostering Russell and I don't care about the matchup for Russell when he's cheap and he's priced more for his average production, and he's priced for the fact that Kenny Atkinson does whatever the hell he wants with Russell's minutes on a game-to-game basis, and that there's just volatility built into his game. When you're paying for all of that, I don't really want to get there.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I guess with Kemba and there's a lot of 7% ownership. Like, can Russell go off here? Yeah. I guess, is he priced at his ceiling? He's pretty close to it.
Who? Horford?
No, Russell. I'm saying, is he priced close to his ceiling? Yeah, he's pretty close to it. Do you want to talk? Unless you have anyone else for Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on the Brooklyn news. I don't mind if you're playing a bunch of lineups on DraftKings, $3,700 Hollis Jefferson, even if those guys are in, but especially if guys are out for the Nets. He played about 24 minutes last game. I think the price tag is just a little low for what he can do if he actually gets the minutes.
All right. Memphis, Denver. Here's an appealing one. 206.5 total. Denver, 5.5-point road favorites. JaMychal Green went from probable to questionable. So he's questionable now. Played only 7 minutes the other night. That wasn't fun for me. A lot of times when you go from probable to questionable, it's not the greatest sign. But we'll have to see what happens.
Especially because I'm not sure if you saw it, but after that game where he played like 7 minutes and wrecked 45% of my lineups, he said that he was not going to play that game because he was too injured, but because they were shorthanded, he gave it a shot. And then today he goes from probable to questionable. So For one, I don't think he's going to play, and for two, I would be terrified to roster him.
Right, exactly. Joe Harris is active, by the way.
Okay. Cool.
I would have no interest. Look, if he doesn't, you'll see Ivan Robb get some backup 4 minutes, and hopefully Jaren Jackson not get an early enough foul trouble to where he plays 30 minutes.
Right, and Bruno would probably get more minutes.
Yes.
I'm not even going to pretend I know how to say that last name, so it's just Bruno.
Caboclo?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like with Rob last time, after Green was out in the second half, he just subbed in for Jackson, and then Jackson came back in. That was pretty much it.
And you have Kyle Anderson back now too, as an actual competent NBA player to pick up minutes.
Right, which means that if you were, at least here's the way I see it, is if you were considering somebody like Justin Holiday, I need my 38 minutes to even consider that guy, and I see his playing time dropping even if Anderson's on a restriction.
I still have Holiday at 36 minutes.
You do still have him at 36?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was playing 38 to 40, but for one, if Green's out, I think then it solidifies those minutes. But with Garrett Temple out, I still think, I mean, Temple was playing 36 minutes a night. So even bringing Kyle Anderson back for like 24 minutes is my guess on him. There's still those minutes there. I still think that Holiday can get around 36.
Okay. Do you
Not
have
that
any?
it makes him a great play, but
Right. Do you have anything you like from Memphis?
in that initial crunch, I got like 15% Gasol on DraftKings. I got like 11% Conley. I got 6% Jaren Jackson Jr.
What about Nikola Jokic?
Yeah, I mean, I like him. It's not the best spot, obviously, but I have him projected to be the highest scorer on the slate. Not for any insanely high score, but I have him at like 55 or 56 DraftKings points. He ended up in about 30% of my initial crunch on DraftKings. He was my third highest owned center there, behind Horford and Harrell, just behind Harrell. So, I like him. It's not like it's a spot where I'm going 80% on Jokic or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, it's tough too. It's not a great spot, but when you're talking about like the truly elite players on this slate, he is really he's in a class of his own from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the only guy from Denver that I got with any sort of frequency.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like on FanDuel, you have Gary Harris at 4,800. I might recommend just if you have to, go to Torian Prince basically at a similar cost. Will Barton, I don't know what type of run he's going to get, even though he's expected to start. Yeah. Really, even with Murray out, the amount of depth that they have from Craig to Barton to Harris to Beasley to Monty Morris, there's just so many bodies, so many mouths to feed, right? Like it's tough, man. I don't see
Plumlee's picking up a bunch of minutes at power forward, which is nice. But with all the value on the slate, I still don't think you have to get to 22 or 23 minutes of Plumlee. Outside of Jokic, I think my favorite play would be Barton on FanDuel, because you're getting, probably around 28 minutes of point Barton at small forward.
All right. Let's close it out with the Clippers and the Hawks. Live before lock coming up next, by the way. To kick off this Monday, you've got Josh and Eddie taking you up till 7 p.m. Eastern time. And by the way, if you've yet to check out awesemo.com, where Adam and I frequent, you can do so by heading over to the homepage, clicking join now. We do have some free content, but if you want to get a look at our premium stuff, our ownership projections, all of our articles, all of our NBA, PGA projections, pretty much for every sport, you name it, and Awesemo, Alex Baker himself, all of his stuff, his rankings, his projections, the lineup builder. You click join now on the homepage, select your plan, put in the information, takes you 2 seconds, and when you enter the coupon code, it is Deeper Dive. One word, Deeper Dive. You get 50% off, half off your first month of premium content at awesemo.com by using Deeper Dive as the promo code. We hope to see you there, friends. All right, let's close it out. Clippers, Atlanta, highest total on the slate. It's up to 233. It was at 231. Clippers only 6-point favorites against Atlanta. Man, I like Lou Williams. I have no issues with Pat Bev, who with Gallinari out, Doc Rivers running a 3-guard rotation, has been getting a ton of minutes. Sure, he's volatile, but if you can get upwards of 35, 38 minutes like we've seen, I see value there. Tobias Harris is kind of just somebody you have to plug in if you're playing tonight, at least in some areas, especially on FanDuel. The Clippers have a lot that I like tonight.
Yeah, absolute priority for me on either site. A bunch of guys from this team. I have it capped basically at 3 per lineup, and I have it so that I don't play any more than 2 of Williams, Harrell, Harris together, and I don't play more than 2 of Bradley, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Beverly together. But they're playing a really tight rotation right now with Gallinari out. You're getting 36 minutes a night from Beverly. On nights where he doesn't suck or get in foul trouble, you're getting around 30 from Gilgeous-Alexander. Lou Williams, he had his minutes limited in 2 games on a back-to-back coming back from injury, but then he played 32 and 28 minutes. He's like a 33% usage, 33% assist guy under these circumstances, in a great spot against the Hawks. So I love him. Harrell, in one of the more favorable matchups that he's had recently. He's had a whole string of games against just massive centers. Not going to be the case here. It's just, mix and match these guys. They all should be pretty highly owned plays for you.
I agree. I'll say this much though. On DraftKings, I don't mind Dwayne Dedmon at all against the Clippers team that's just been tortured by centers. And the minutes, it's always tough to tell. Could it be Alex Len? Could Alex Len have a strong game on the bench? He could, absolutely. But you're talking about a Clippers team that second most points to centers, fifth most rebounds, second most assists. This is real. Third most blocks, second most free throws, and most field goal attempts. Opposing teams have attacked them with decent centers. Dedmon's the type of guy that can jack up threes. He's a quality rebounder. He's a plus 1 point per minute guy. I don't have any issues with Dedmon. I don't even hate Torian Prince on FanDuel at 5,300. What are you doing, if anything, with the Hawks team before we close it out?
Outside of game stacks, I like them obviously less than I like the Clippers. I agree that Dedmon could have a good game in this spot. My concern is just the minutes. Amari Spellman is pretty clearly in the rotation now, and so I only have Dedmon projected for 26 minutes. I have Len at 16.
Pretty much capped at 28 if he's playing well.
Right, and so that really scares me. I got like 8% on DraftKings. I limited him to power forward eligibility there. Torian Prince, I agree, is a fine play, especially on FanDuel. Trey Young, especially as a correlation play, I think makes sense, but he's not a priority for me as a standalone play. It's much more the Clippers than the Hawks for me as standalone plays.
Yeah, although I will say it's nice to see this game with a 6-point spread. It suggests that the Clippers just aren't that good.
I love this game. Like if I plan on making so I produce more lineups than I need, but out of the lineups I make, I'm planning on having like 1/8 of them be game stacks of this game.
Yep, I'm with you. John Collins is another one. Quickly, what's your thought on that? We had some questions on him, just very quickly.
Phenomenal spot for him. A little concerned about the minutes again because Spellman's in the rotation. Carter is playing at times. It's hard for me to give right now Collins more than like 30 minutes confidently with this team getting healthy.
Yeah, and you have a lot of power forwards in that mid-range that you can pivot to. That's the reason I had trouble getting to Collins. Well, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us as always. If you enjoy our content, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video if you want to see more. It helps us out a lot. We really appreciate it. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you always know when new content's dropping. And most importantly, stick around for Live Before Lock with Josh and Eddie coming up next. Good luck tonight.